Well, good morning. We're sitting here about ready to take a run, and we realized the radar was going to be killing us with the storm coming up, so we're doing maintenance. We had some stator issues, which turned out to be a regulator, not a stator. And
thankfully.
And Puck is just having a wonderful time wrapping. Oops, I'm getting a little bit behind here. I'm the one in charge of tape, and
yeah,
I'm messing up royally. We were having a discussion about horsepower versus torque and how they're interrelated. So I thought maybe we would just get into that for you guys, okay? And again, this is our theories, our opinions, and we do know the old line that torque gets you off the line and horsepower gets you across the line. So now from that, here's Scott.
Oh. So what do you want? What do you want from me, Vaz? You want me to tell him my theory?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Yeah, okay, all right, so here's the deal. That 5-pound hammer, okay, is the weight of it is measured in pounds, okay? Now this is my theory, all right? And I'm ready to be blown out of the saddle by you guys, but just hear me out on this, Vaz. That 5-pound hammer weighs 5 pounds, all right? For me to lift that hammer off my leg requires me to be able to lift 5 pounds of weight. If I can't lift 5 pounds of weight, now watch, I can't lift that. Okay, that means that I can't lift 5 pounds of weight. There's a 20-ounce hammer or a 16-ounce hammer. All right, and it says it right on the side, 16 ounces. Okay. So now this guy that you might consider weak, some might consider him strong. If it's a baby and he lifted 5 pounds, you go, oh my gosh, the guy's like a Hercules or something. Okay. That same person that couldn't lift that 5 pounds of weight grabbed a hold of this 16 ounces, which, by the way, is another measurement of weight, okay? Grabbed a hold of it and lifted that, just barely could lift that thing up, but was able to move it, pick it up, lift it up, okay? He or she lifted that amount of weight, that 16 ounces, okay? Literally talking a weight measurement. All right, so here's the scoop. If you think of that weight as load or as work, okay, those terms are very important. Now, these are my theories, again, okay? I've been around this stuff for a while. You know, a couple years I've built motors and played with dynos and different things. And so I think in a gear-headed kind of a way, all right? And I know this is really unorthodox and way out there, and I'm going to get all kinds of challenges to it, and that's good, because it maybe makes some other people think about, well, maybe some of this is right, maybe some of it's not. This is work. This is work. This is the load. This is weight movement, okay? Torque, in its stated form, is a measurement of moving that weight rotationally, all right? It's a measurement of does that engine, piston design and stroke design and on and on and on have enough gumption, torque, to move this work or load measured in weight rotationally, okay? But irregardless, we're talking about lifting it, 16 ounces, 5 pounds, or rotating it. We're still talking about weight, work. It's the work, it's the load, okay? Now, along comes Joe Muscleman. You've seen them before because Baz took a picture of me yesterday, video of me yesterday. You see seen them arms before. Along comes a muscle man, right? That grabs that 5-pound hammer and lifts it. Okay? Now, if that 5-pound hammer is a limiting factor, if we know a given weight, all right? The motorcycle world, a lot of people may not know this, realize this, but the federal government in the United States has declared, as far as I know, the last that I read, that anything over 1,700 pounds cannot be classified as a motorcycle. So now we have a given weight, okay? So if you build an engine beyond that capacity of 1,700 pounds rotational force, being able to move that 1,700 pounds, if you build it to be able to move 6,000 pounds, 8,000 pounds, a locomotive, train, okay? I mean tons and tons. If you build that engine to be able to do all that stuff, and you're only going to be moving 1,700 pounds, in my opinion, it's wasted torque. And I'll tell you why. Here's why. Horsepower is a measurement, strictly a measurement of speed, acceleration, time, okay? All of those things. Horsepower, the whole horsepower concept is this. It's being able to move the load. Now horsepower, that's torque. Horsepower comes in, and it's a measurement of how fast can I move the load, okay? How fast can I move the load? How fast can I move? How fast can I get the job done? How quick can I get that job done, okay? That's what horsepower is. Go ahead, that's right.
Okay. So, well, I'm getting because in our previous talk, I'm getting the feeling that to rotate that 16-ounce hammer is going to take 1 pound of torque to rotate it. To pull it along the ground, what is that going to take in horsepower? Is that 1 horsepower to pull it?
No.
Okay.
No. Horsepower.
So, but we've got rotational for torque.
No, and that's a very good, by Gabble drops. That's a very good question. And now we're getting into the meat of why people get confused. Horsepower has nothing to do with the ability to pull that weight, to rotate that. Hold on now. Rotate those pounds of weight. That has nothing to do with it. That's torque.
Yeah, I figured torque on the rotational.
Yep, that's torque. And so the rotational mass, when you put it on a dyno, and it's measuring torque on your torque curve, that dyno is putting out on a graph how many pounds that crankshaft can rotate, and that pounds is the bike itself. It's the mass,
right.
Okay,
and its load.
Mm-hmm. And now that's a good point too, because if let's say you got a 600-pound motorcycle, and you're going to pull a 400-pound trailer, and you're going to be carrying 300 pounds of gear. You add up all of those numbers, okay? You better be thinking in your mind, do I have the torque needed to pull this thing, okay? That's what torque. If you're going to be concerned with I'm going to be pulling a trailer and 300 pounds of weight, and this motorcycle was, you add them all up, you first accumulate your torque figure, okay? You first accumulate your torque, because you got to be able to move. You got to be able to get that mass moving, okay? And then whatever is left over. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Whatever is left over in engine design is you want to spend that on horsepower, because you don't want to hire some great big old muscle bound guy that moves like a sloth. Yeah, he can lift 490 pounds with one hand. He can lift that whole pallet up by himself, but he does this. It's like he could lift 1,200 pounds. His max load is 400 pounds. What you want is the guy that can lift the 450 pounds, but can do this and get the job done. Move it quickly. So here's us old builders. There's this thing called piston speed, okay, in engine building. All right. And what happens? What the way that you develop torque is by long stroke. All right. Big honking pistons, big old thing. Weight on the crankshaft keeps it going. I mean, there's all kinds of things, but the downside of building for torque is piston speed.
There's a limit.
Piston speed. Pistons and rods, even with exotic metals and metallurgy and the best of the forgings and the on and on and on. Us old guys, our old school of thought, and I bet you, if you looked in the physics books today, these would be pretty doggone close. About 5,000-ish, and I don't know if it's inches per second or feet per second, but there's a mathematical measurement where pistons come unglued. They just absolutely. Now, here's what people, when we talk about that, here's what people forget. When you have the same where you're taking your torque measurement from on the end of the crankshaft, which, by the way, even though you're doing it out of the dyno, it's still measuring crank torque. It's just that crank torque is being deducted for all the other moving parts that are at the back wheel, but it's still, that engine is producing that torque. Okay, so let's say you have a rod. Let's say you have a rod this long, that long right there, connected to a piston, connected to your crankshaft down here at the bottom, and that rod is going up and down with a piston on the top of it. Okay, every time that crankshaft rotates 360 degrees, that rod is going up and down one time. We know that. Okay, so what happens is, if you rotate the crankshaft 360 degrees and it's this length, it only takes a certain amount of time for that rod to go up. If you increase that, do you ever watch those great big huge windmills that they're building now? Those massive windmills. Those windmills are designed for torque. You can actually sit and count the revolutions. Like, I think the last time I counted, I think I figured like 5 times a minute or something.
Yeah,
like
anywhere from 5. In fact, in the winds of Oklahoma or Texas, I saw them doing about 12 revolutions per minute.
Whipping,
yeah.
And that would be whipping. Yeah. That's 12 revolutions per minute. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, on these gas engines, like my R1, we're talking 12 grand, 11 grand, 12,000 revolutions, and they're the same. Don't misconstrue this. They're the same revolutions per minute. Mathematically, it's all built on math. So here's what happens. If they spun those massive windmills up, let's say they spun them up to 4 grand. Okay, I mean,
yeah, that's kind of even 100 RPM would probably destroy them.
That thing, if they spun one of those things up to 4 grand, it would explode.
Yeah,
the tower, the whole. I mean, it literally. So here's what happens with rotational rod movement up and down, you increase the length of that rod to increase your torque. When you make one revolution on your crankshaft, this frickin' rod is flying, and the piston on the end is flying. And it's all about piston speed. And people that build engines that have been around this stuff, I know there's all kinds of talk and argument back and forth about, nah, it's nonsense. That's not. No, it's not nonsense. And I'll tell you how I know. Because I've been building engines since Tecumseh motored mini bikes back in the 60s, and I cannot tell you how many of those little engines that I blew up took the rods out of them by doing this, reaching down and pushing it against, we called it the governor. This is the governor that controlled the RPM of that engine. The reason that they put a governor on that little 3.5 horse motor was to keep from happening exactly what I'm talking about. It's piston speed. So what you do, what an engine builder will do, at least what I do anyway, and have done, is you want torque. It involves a lot more too. There's valve timing, cam grinds, and different things. If we're talking about 4-stroke motors, 2-stroke motors, same rule. Same exact rule, only they don't have all the other valve grinds and different things because they're a 2-stroke, okay? But it's piston speed. You want to build for torque, and all you do is you figure out, okay, I'm gonna be riding a 700-pound motorcycle. I'm gonna carry this much gear. I'm gonna build this motor, and it's gonna be a 1200cc motor, okay? Well, I build an 1800cc motor. I can gain on horsepower. I can gain on horsepower by not overutilizing my torque. Don't build beyond your necessary requirement for torque. Just add it all together. It's simple. It's simple math. How much weight how much work do I want this thing to be done? And then beyond that, listen very carefully. This idea that overbuilding for massive torque is gaining you anything is insane. It's insane. I have said it for years. We're way out in left center field on where this whole needing massive engines in these motorcycles. This 1200cc motorcycle that Baz is leaning against, this Yamaha 1200 cc's, is 74 cubic inches. Always has been, always will be. Back in the Harley 74 days, do you know that they were the dominant, largest produced touring bike, period, across the board? We don't need any more. And the speeds, speed records, you want to talk about speed records in this whole thing. Speed records are still standing to this day from like 20s and the 30s and everything else. It's still all mathematical engineering, understanding engine speeds and torque and building your engine for what you need and what you're after. But why overbuild? Why not build for torque for the work that is required, and anything beyond that, use it for horsepower. You can listen. Here's one that'll really rattle the cage. You can, in my opinion, I'm not talking about non-aspirated, which this discussion came up earlier too. When you say non-aspirated to this old guy, you're talking about either a turbocharged or a supercharged motor. You're talking about a blown. It's getting forced air into it. That's all. That's what. Okay. So I'm talking natural aspiration, be it injected or carbureted or whatever. And stock stuff. Really, truthfully, you don't. Why waste your energy? You can overbuild for torque, in my opinion. You cannot overbuild for horsepower. You somewhere, sometime, even if you're a granny driver and you're going down the highway and you're driving your little 3-cylinder Suzuki putt, and something happens in this lane beside you and you want to avoid it, you step on the gas and you got 35 horsepower, you're pretty much in your own way, all right? But you get out on the highway with something that's been overbuilt for torque and has got no horsepower. We're talking about now in the time thing. You want to go. You wasted it all on torque. If you have, let's just say you have 160 horse, and I think a good figure for torque, max for torque, is somewhere in the 80 foot-pounds of torque. Motorcycle wise, normal everyday weight of a motorcycle stuff, 80 foot-pounds of torque is plenty. Dump 160 horse on top of that 80. You go down the highway just as nice and smooth as can be, and somebody wants to dance. Somebody wants to cause you problems. Something happens where you need to get away. Bam! You're out of there. It's that easy. It's horsepower that does that. Okay, and that's my theory and where I'm coming from. Vaz, questions?
No.